Alright, how we doing today? Okay, next part. Pop art is what we're going to be starting with. Now, when you get to pop art, there's only one section for this quiz, because this is the big portion. If you notice on the syllabus that there is a large video or a video then a quiz, know that this is going to take some time to get through this. Alright, there's a lot of little sub videos. I recommend you look through them. They're not mandatory, but there might be a question or two through those, so I would look through it for your quiz. Most of the videos are no more than 3 to 5 minutes. Unless I say this is a 10-minute video, but you only need to watch the first 4 minutes or so. But this is also a very, excuse the pun, popular section, okay, for pop art. And there's a lot of components. This one's not an easy lesson plan. Like, I could do a full semester on pop art alone. And I'm only giving you a little bit of the pop art, people. I'm just kind of sprinkling it in, and it still takes me a while. This lecture, and when I'm teaching it in class, is a 4 to 5 class lecture, so it takes me 2 weeks to get through this. So just to be prepared, this video will take some time to get through. I will try to go through this PowerPoint as quickly as I can. I do have 104 slides to go through, so it's going to take some time. But let's see. Let's start talking. What is pop art? Well, it's a few things, okay? The word pop means popular, so it's popular art. This was really kind of set up in the 1950s, right after the abstract expressionist. What this message of this group is that they're trying to push the boundaries of what is art, what can be art. And as we get going, you're going to hear me talk about various artists like Marcel Duchamp, who pushes that even further in boundaries in the 40s and 30s. He was pushing it. But that question, you know, I keep bringing, what is art? Well, art can be anything, like you've already learned. It's what sets into those 5 categories, and pop art really loves that. Now, I'm going to be starting with Andy Warhol. Now, Andy Warhol believed that pop art could be popular tools or products, or popular people. Okay, so on my first 2 slides, it's illustrating this. So right now, I put up a car that's popular right now. The Tesla, okay? These electric cars, they're becoming more and more popular. When I first started teaching this class 10 years ago, the electric car was something of an ethereal car, and then now it's more of a reality, and it's becoming more and more affordable for the mass public. I put the Tesla's newest car, kind of looks like the DeLorean of electric cars, with their back doors that raise up, which is weird that it's the back door instead of the front door, but whatever. I'm not a car designer. And it looks like it has wings. It's kind of a weird car. So anyway, I chose this as a popular car, as a product. Now, in the 1970s, 60s, Andy Warhol played with a lot of things that were popular that are now dated. That's the one thing about pop art. It gets dated very quickly. Within a decade, it's been considered not pop anymore, and it's become more of an artifact, and so to speak. So it's one of those kind of double-edged swords. Some people do stay popular longer than others, and some products stay popular longer than others, and some are just kind of classic, but some can get dated. So it's a very kind of it's a tricky area. Okay, if I had to think about things that were popular in the 80s, okay, let's go music. Okay, let's do a whole genre of music. 80s. Let's go before that. 70s. Record players. Okay, you had two types of records. Okay, you had large records and small records. 45s. All right, and those became super popular in the 70s, and then it went to 8-track. Okay, I haven't seen an 8-track in years. And then after 8-track, it went to cassette tapes in the 80s. And that was a huge movement for a lot of record labels. And that seemed to hold its weight for almost a decade. I remember my first Sony Walkman. And for those that have never seen one, look them up. And then the compact disc became the next thing was a compact disc or CD player, which at first the portable one, it skipped like crazy, wasn't that great, but they got better over time. And it's funny, now CDs are obsolete. I mean, I have a stack of them from music that I love, and I hardly ever play them. I downloaded all of them to the computer, and now it's on my computer. Then it goes from that to a music MP3, and I remember when that came out, and I was like, well, how are you going to play the MP3? Because I played it through the computer. I still was using my CD player, and then when Apple came out with their iPod Shuffle, and the iPod Touch, I mean, that just totally changed everything for music. And that became popular. And then now, it's just become mainstream. Our phones, I don't even think I haven't bought a song in forever. I just download an app that allows me to play any song anytime I want. So now it's even gotten where I haven't needed to buy a CD anymore. So it's interesting how that kind of shuffled have gone through, and with pop art they've kind of played with music for years. Now anytime they go back to the 80s, they consider it retro. Okay, retro is the new term, and retro I would say between the 50s, well, I'd even maybe go into the 20s, from the 20s to the 80s is become this retro category. If it's in the 20s, it's almost kind of like what you see for music videos. A lot of times they go back into that Great Gatsby kind of a feel, and so I go look at places like Urban Outfitters, and they totally play off that retro card, and that's a very kind of poppy place. All right, and you're going to actually hear me talk about Urban Outfitters and with another artist. I actually don't shop there, not because I don't want to not be trendy. I'm boycotting the place, and I'll explain why when I get there. So, now, let's go to the next thing, popular people. Popular people. Now, the way this breaks down is you can see 2008 is when I made this PowerPoint, and I kind of I kept the date. I could have cleaned this up for you guys and started brand new, but I put this down in 2008. Oprah Winfrey was still doing her TV show. I think it was one of her last years, so she had one more year before she retired her show. But she's one of those people I consider to be pop that will stand the test of time. Okay, so when I look at her, I think she's going to be somebody my grandchildren will probably know. I have children, and so I think my grandchildren will know who Oprah Winfrey is. She's one of those people that kind of will stand up. And now, when she was in 2000 through the 80s, she was very prevalent. All right, but whatever this woman said, if you don't think she didn't get Barack Obama into office, okay, I mean, she really had a big power swing politically, product-wise, huge swing. If Oprah's Things was one of her shows, and people bought whatever she approved, I mean, without question. And so I think of her as pop. Right now, Andy Warhol would have totally done an Oprah Winfrey image if he was alive today, without a question of a doubt. But what else can be popular? All right, think about this. Okay, let's go into music again, like I just did with CDs and the whole industry right there for a second. Let's go to let's go back to the way I think for the music. Some people, when I first started this in 2008 especially, or I'd say a little bit before, I'd hear Beyonce, and I was like, I don't know. As time has come, and it's almost 8 years later, 9 years later, since I've done that, and for right now, she has become more and more popular over time, and I do think she might be able to stand the test of time. I'm not against it, but we'll see how the decades go. Politically, Barack Obama, Donald Trump just got in office, so that might be, he's real popular right now in the art scene. If you are for him or against him, either way, he's pop right now, because he's not a politician that won office, which is never done before. And so I don't choose sides for politics in these videos especially. But I am kind of Democratic leaning more, so just FYI. But now, but yeah, when you look at political figures, okay, Nelson Mandela, that was one person that was part of Andy Warhol's work, but then became more and more popular in the 80s and 90s, okay, again. So, but yeah, when you think of musicians, and you think of political people, let's go with another musician who's passed away, Michael Jackson. I have a video where Andy Warhol does a Michael Jackson. I do believe he can stand the test of time because of his dance moves, his videos, his songs, and even some of his scandals that made him popular for a short bit. So negativity can make you popular. Playing with that negativity, let's go with the sports figures. Negativity, can O.J. Simpson be popular? Yeah, sure. Let's say Tiger Woods, his big scandal that happened almost 5 years ago. But that was a huge scandal. But he was also an amazing player. Same thing with O.J. Simpson, an amazing football player. He was amazing. He won the Heisman. And so, and then you have, let's think about people that have not had bad, tarnished backgrounds. What about Michael Jordan? That's very popular. He'll probably stand the test of time with his shoes line, his sports. Some people say LeBron James. I get that one a lot. I don't know yet on LeBron. He hasn't won enough rings for me to say yes or no. And that's not a slam. It kind of is, but it's not really. He's a great player. No denying that. But in my opinion, until he gets the rings like Michael Jordan, then I will consider him that to be as great. So if you're a basketball fan. And then what about evil people? Can evil people be popular? Hitler will always stand the test of time. For negativity for Americans. What about Osama bin Laden? Okay, that's another bad person that will probably stand the test of time for 9/11. So we have these characters. Now I'm going to also show prime ministers from the 1960s and 70s that. When I show General Mao, most of you guys won't know. You've seen his image, but you won't know his name. And so there's going to be some people here that you're going to see that you might know, but you might not know. Okay, and it's kind of interesting how this all kind of plays out with our time versus what was the time during the 60s and 70s. Now. So I want you to know these categories: popular people and popular products. It's the key element for pop. Okay, I want you to know those. Okay, it's going to be very important. There will be a question on that on your quiz, so I'd write it down. All right, Andy Warhol. All right. Now, this is where I have a little fun in the class. I asked the class, and I look for usually a young gentleman, and I ask him what a Brillo is. Okay, a Brillo, and they can look at the little bottom that says soap pad. Have you ever heard of a Brillo? Okay, and if you haven't, that means you haven't done enough hand washing dishes for your mother, and you need to do more of it. Okay, it's those little steel wool pads, SOS pads. Okay, Brillo is just a name brand in the 1970s. Now, when you think about a Brillo box, they're very tiny, and here he's standing amongst his Brillo boxes that are very quite large, 2 foot by 3 foot boxes. And they're all silk screened. There are no pads inside of it. It's the box he's interested in. And he's stacking it just like how he'd see it at a grocery store. Okay? Now, the one thing about Andy Warhol, now, a lot of people said he didn't do hardcore drugs like cocaine, heroin. He did do speed. There's no denying that, because the man never slept when he was at his peak of his career. And his personality is kind of joking. Every artist before him was very serious, stern. I'm a man, and I'm making art. And Andy Warhol was kind of an anomaly. He was a little quiet, pacifist. He started his whole career doing advertising, and he actually kept doing advertising when he became famous. And he would do these ads, and I think that's what really gave him the imagery that he was looking for, and the ideas. And he would draw advertisement logos, and he got paid doing it. He was really good at it. But a lot of people called him like a machine. I mean, he would crank out work like there's no tomorrow, and a lot of people say that, well, he didn't quite, quote-unquote, make his work because he had what we call the factory. The factory was a group of people. If you've ever heard of Studio 54, a lot of the people in the factory helped set up and establish Studio 54, which was a popular dance club kind of scene that was very artistic. When he had all these people working for him, yes, they did replicate his work. Like you see the cow image here, the Borden's cow. Now, we see the Borden's today, and it's a cartoon figure, and I'll explain that. Why has it changed? Now, here he's taken this image, and he would go up to his group of people, say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And he would set up his screens that one would have yellow, one would have red, one would have black settings for it. They would put the ink in it, and they would squeegee it across the screen onto a piece of paper, or a canvas, so to speak. And once they were all done, then he would come back through, and he would sign the ones he approved. All right, and so in an afternoon, if he needed 100 prints, well, his team of people that he hired at the factory or studio, that's what he would. That's what he would do. He'd just say, okay, guys, I need this done. But see, the thing about it, yes, he did not make the art. That is true. Okay, but he had the idea, and so that's where the artistic style comes into place. And a lot of artists in today's time, with the idea of mass production, and everybody wants a piece, and you got to make the work, and if you don't make the work, you're not going to be relevant, so you got to constantly work. And so here, when he made this piece, it got out to the public, and it was quite successful. Now, in today's time, when we make a piece, okay, and we're copying someone's logo, so to speak, is that legal? Well, no, it's not. It's actually illegal to copy someone's logo without their authenticity or their approval. Now, can you change their logo but still use their words and still use the meaning or the message? Yes, you can, okay, and you will not get in trouble. If you change it up to about 20%, where it's still a recognizable image, it is legal to use that image, okay? But you have to change it, all right? And that's what he kind of does in some aspects. But in the other part is, no one sued in the 1970s. If Borden wanted to sue him for using their logo for this cow, in 1970s, they would have laughed at it. And today, they'd be like, all right, that's a valid case. Let's get a lawyer. Da-da-da-da. Boom, you get sued. I think this world right now is a little sue-happy at times. So anyway, let's get into the factory. So the factory people, they would work on these pieces for him. He'd have the idea, and he would do lots of mass productions. All right. Which also allowed him to interview, meet people. So it's about his brand, so to speak. Now, when Borden saw his cow, okay, they immediately changed their logo, okay, which I find this real interesting. He's known for doing the Campbell soup can, which I'll be showing here, and the Campbell soup can got such popular feedback from him making artwork from it, and Borden didn't like his personality and didn't like the way he was as an artist, so they changed their logo completely. And so if you were born in the 1970s, you might remember Borden looking like this. If you were born in the 80s, you might recognize the cartoon logo, as I grew up knowing as well too. And if you're in the 90s and the 2000s, you've known the cartoon all your life. And so you've never even thought about it being a real cow. So, anyway. So, let's go into the next portion, which is... now, here's an interview video. It's down below. Just click on the link. It's literally like 30 seconds long. And I want you to see his personality and how he acts as he's being questioned. He's making fun of the reporter. And there's his gallery director right beside him. And they're both giggling and laughing through it. Okay, he's not taking any of this serious. I also have another video here. Okay, and I thought this was a kind of a neat video. That's right below it. And it's kind of a... it's got a writer's kind of a twist on it, and he talks about Andy Warhol and kind of breaks it down a little differently than I do. I'm basically just stating here it is, and this is, and he really focuses more in depth onto Andy Warhol. So you might like his video. So click on that one and watch that video as well. I think he's from London. It's what it looks like, or New York. And it's a good video. I highly recommend it. Watch it. Okay, next one. Soup can. What he's most likely known for his products. Now, the Campbell soup can. How did he come up with this idea? Well, first of all, he looked at the way the stores were displaying the soup cans, and they're all stacked on top of, almost like a sculpture inside the grocery store. So, of course, this is something that intrigued him, besides the logo. Now, when he did the Campbell soup can, tomato soup, and it got into Time magazine, the moment it got into Time magazine, he became a mega art star. All right? And any artist at that time that got into Time magazine, which all these artists I'm showing you today have been in Time magazine. Okay. Now, when he got into Time magazine, his career just skyrocketed. He had to have the factory in full swing. And now, when you look at some of these Campbell soup cans, some were silk screened, some were hand drawn. Okay. And you can tell the difference between the hand-drawn versus the silkscreen, and I'll show you in the next piece. Now, when this hit to Time magazine and Campbell Soup Can was on the cover, this is the interesting thing. I don't think Campbell's really even knew who Andy Warhol was or cared. And then he did their logo. And all of a sudden, their sales for Campbell Soup within a month tripled. Okay, for the month. That year, as he became more and more popular, the soup can for Campbell's became an icon, and it actually was the #1 soup for 2 decades. Okay, that's impressive. Okay, so I believe people would choose that brand over a Progresso or any other soup brand that was out there, especially in the 70s. There wasn't that many, and so when he came out with this this logo, if you notice, they have not changed their logo. Now they have added like a spoon with what the soup looks like inside the can on the label. But if you look down at the bottom shelf, a few soups like tomato, chicken, noodle, mushroom, and a few are still the classic logo at the bottom shelf that you usually can get in bulk. That's one of their trademarks. They will never trade that logo out, and I think that's great that they keep it still a traditional logo. And like I talked about in design, when I talked about the Cadillac, yeah, have they kind of tweaked it a little bit? Sure, okay, but they're still keeping. It's a good product, and it's still holding the test of the time, and the logo is classic. And so, as you see here, you also got the Campbell soup can where the can is labels being ripped off, and this is a little bit different. You don't see this image floating around very much, so I put that in. I kind of like that, the layout of it. Okay. Now, write this label down. When this is a question about what's the name of this art piece, well, if it's 100 cans of soup, well then, by God, I'm going to probably use that as and that's the name of the art piece. I'm probably going to use it if it's that simple of a title. Okay, 100 soup cans. Now this one he hand drew all the way across, and as you look down the rows, you can start to see some of the cans don't touch quite right at the bottom. I'd say the last 4 rows, about 3 cans over, and that gap you see there is a little opening. Okay, and this tells me right then and there he did each individual can one at a time, and it kind of has this kind of weird offset, which I actually kind of like. I think if it was all done like a computer, it wouldn't have any like pizzazz to it. So it's kind of nice that it looks like it's hand done. And this is a painting, and actually if you're from Dallas area, the Dallas Fort Worth Museum over at the Modern at Fort Worth, they own this piece, and so it's really a popular piece to go see. If you live in the DFW area, go check it out. Alright, and so, again, he's just playing off of what he saw in the stores. And I don't think he realized how popular this piece was going to get, and that he was going to be doing soup cans the rest of his life for his products, but it worked for him. Now, his popular people, Marilyn Monroe. Now, he did 22 series of this piece, okay? The original one you see is on the left, okay, of the traditional Marilyn Monroe. Now, what is he doing with these popular people? Okay, first of all, they're a huge establishment in the culture of popularity. All right, everyone knows who Marilyn Monroe is. Married to Joe DiMaggio, was an actress, did a pinup for Playboy. I mean, she was a household name in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And so as he used her image, and she was always kind of set as popularity, he knew it was guaranteed to be success. So when I talked about that word piggybacking, he's piggybacking off of her success in his art form. Now, what else is he doing? So why would he do 22 varieties of her? Well, the reason is he's trying to make her become useless, okay? She's so popular, he's making the image of her become mundane and almost obsolete, okay? And it doesn't matter what color you make her in, she's still going to be Marilyn Monroe, okay? So when you see these multicolors, what is he doing? Well, why is he doing it? Well, the reason is he's trying to show the viewers, it doesn't matter what color I make her, you will know who she is, and you will, and she will become, she could be any color, and I guarantee you'll still buy it because you know who the image is because she's so popular. And that was the truth. And one of his reproduction copies in a certain stage, I think, just recently sold for $27 million for a print, and he made like 100 of these. I mean, he made tons of them. Now, did he sell them at that cost? He sold them fairly high, but not in the million category back in those days. Made enough to make a good living selling prints, and he would make on average about 100 prints per edition. Okay, which is a lot. So let's now look at these. Okay, so here we got two people. Okay, total opposites. One's an athlete. I'm sure you recognize Muhammad Ali. And then over here, you might not recognize her for you younger viewers, but for the older people that are looking at this PowerPoint, you might recognize her. This is Elizabeth Taylor. In my opinion, she's one of the prettiest women ever to be on the movie screen. She was classic. Now, and besides her beauty, okay, she's an icon, just like Marilyn Monroe. Now, her image is not as popular. People don't remember her as well. Now, I believe when Marilyn Monroe was in her heyday in the 1960s and 70s, yeah, she was knockout beautiful, and she was even beautiful when she was an older lady. But she kind of left the limelight. She left the scene, okay, and she got married, and she was married, I think, 7 times. Each time she got married, she married a more wealthier husband, and the last husband she married, she loved diamonds and bought her a diamond mine. Okay, she was uber rich. Okay, when she passed away, and she even had her own, and I think they still sell it today, her own perfume line. Now, Muhammad Ali, on the other hand, is totally different. Okay, he's an athlete. Now, every artist, every person that he used, he would ask permission if he could to use their image. So he asked Elizabeth Taylor. She, of course, said yes. Marilyn Monroe, I think, passed away before, or shortly after his pieces were made, which again at that point was popular, so that she passed away. But he asked Muhammad Ali if he could do an image, and Muhammad Ali said no. And of course, obviously, he did do an image. It's right here in front of us. But how did he get it to come across? Well, he actually went to, he lives in New York, and he went to the Garden Center and watched him fight, I think it was Frazier, who he lost first to. And he watched Frazier and Muhammad Ali fight, and if you look in the video, he's front and center, 3rd row back from the center of the ring. So you can tell by his white hair, and if you watch that in the background, watching him, he is totally repulsed of the situation of them fighting, and so he does not like it, and you can see his head kind of jerking back and forth every time Muhammad Ali gets hit really hard. And if you know anything about this, Muhammad Ali lost the fight. Okay, it was one of his first fights he's ever lost, and so at this moment, Muhammad Ali was in his in his dressing area, or his locker room, and Andy Warhol thought this would be a perfect time. He's already sent letters, and he's gotten rejected many times, and so Andy goes into the back area, and he had that kind of pizzazz, like, well, if you don't know who I am, get out of my way. If no bouncer would stop him, because he was so he had a charisma about him that people were like, okay. And so he asked, could he go see Muhammad Ali? Well, he actually gets the opportunity, and his publicist goes to Muhammad Ali and says, hey, we have an artist out here, Andy Warhol, who wants to see you. And Muhammad Ali is like, tell that guy to leave me alone. And then the publicist comes back to him and says, well, he's been making images of popular people, and it could really help your image right now. You just lost this huge fight. So he asked him to come in, and he talked to him for a second. And this is what Muhammad Ali said to Andy Warhol, which I thought was interesting. He said, I've seen your art, Okay, and I've seen it in magazines, and I've seen what you did to that pretty girl. And he goes, and if you do that to my image, and you make me any color other than what I am, okay, and if you, I will find your studio, and I'll come knock you out. And Andy was like, and he was like, okay, I understand. And so when you look at this image, yes, the skin tone is natural, okay. But this is where he got in a dilemma. Okay, as he's looking at pictures of Muhammad Ali, he noticed that some of the pictures he had red gloves on, and then he noticed that some of the pictures he had these orange gloves on, and he didn't know which gloves were his kind of good gloves to use. So he kind of figured take the chance of doing one of each. Okay, and so he did this red and orange in both hands, and kind of took a chance at, if he did one all in red, he might get in trouble. And then if he did one all in orange, he might get in trouble because those might be his unlucky gloves. And so I thought that was kind of smart on his part. He put this out, and he only made a small edition. I think he only made 50 prints of them. All right. They sold immediately. They sold like hotcakes. And Muhammad Ali prints are his most valuable portrait prints there are out there, because he only made such a limited amount of them. And Muhammad Ali liked it so much he actually bought one. All right, and so it actually worked out in his favor. And so at the end of it, it kind of plays out. Now, here we got political, okay? If you don't know who the lady is on the left, you might not be from Dallas. Every person in Dallas knows this woman, and if you don't, look at your history books. This is Jackie Onassis, okay? For those that don't know who Jackie Onassis is, it's the wife of Kennedy, okay? And she is the epitome of the perfect housewife. And also being from Dallas, you see her going off the motorcade, hanging out the back after the shots were fired. So she, again, is a very traumatic woman in a lot of popularity. So, of course, put the most ideal woman in political history in an image. So I could see Michelle Obama being one of these women, too. Okay, very much so. All right. Now here's General Mao. All right. Now General Mao, this piece was made because one of his friends is in trouble. All right, and you're going to notice that at this time, artists help each other. The artists in the past, they would kind of let them fall on their own sword and let them have career suicide on art pieces, what they knew would get them in trouble. And here he's defending one of his artists. So you'll see in a minute that when I bring this piece, why was this made? He originally did not intend to make it, and it became one of his more popular pieces. So we'll talk about that in the future, coming up real soon. Here we go with, we have Queen Elizabeth. Now this is a younger version Queen, okay. It's amazing she's still alive. She's an older lady, wow. And it's quite amazing, her run in her reign. Now, when you look at this image of her, it is totally different from the black and white silhouettes that you saw in the earlier pieces. Here, he kind of put this he would hand paint onto the prints, and he only did small additions in the 80s like this. And some people love it more, some people don't. I like the black ones a little bit better personally, but some people love these, so I definitely make sure I hit every genre of him. Then you have right next to him is an Elvis Presley image. Now, he did Elvis, but he only chose to do one solid color for Elvis's life-size screens. Now, one of the things, Elvis, I think he would have been more fancier and colorful, but he chose to do Elvis in more of a kind of a serene look, and it's one of his worst movies as a cowboy. I forgot what the movie's called, but it's pretty bad. It's a horrible movie. Singing as a cowboy and shooting people. But anyway, it's not my favorite Elvis, and I love Elvis. when you look at Elvis here, though, I would have chose any of his rhinestone positions where he's out in those big jumpsuits with the big glasses. That seems more what I would have chose for an Elvis instead of this, and I'm just kind of shocked he didn't, because that seems kind of his personality to have in there. Maybe it was too obvious, and that's why he didn't do it. Now, again, the repetition. Okay, I showed you the Brillo boxes at the beginning of this lecture. Now, the Brillo boxes, you can see it just looks like a store, how it's stacked up like you would maybe see like it's Super Bowl time for Coke and Pepsi. If a store is having a sale on one of those products, that's what they typically do. And that's what he's trying to do in the gallery format. Now, when you look at the Marilyn Monroe, you can see that this is obviously screen printed on. Now, on the screen printed Marilyn Monroe, not all of them are perfect. Now, this is what tells me right here, I'm a printmaker. I focus on printmaking, and when I do an image on a print, I make sure that if I did the next one, it would be perfect. And you got to understand, he's having tons of people making these, and they're quickly doing it. So if there's any imperfection, for him, he kind of felt like it was okay. But in this image, for instance, and they do have this piece also at the Fort Worth Modern in the DFW area, and this one's typically shown on a regular basis. If you look at the Marilyn Monroe, what I don't like is some of them kind of look very masculine and almost drag queenish. So, but then some are right on perfect, like the first one I showed you. So to me, when you rush this kind of stuff, it kind of gets these funkiness to them, and some people like that, some people don't. I'm on the fence where if you're paying that much money for an art piece, make it a little bit more crisper and make it look more accurate, so you don't have a questionable Marilyn Monroe, so it doesn't look like quite manly. That's my opinion. Now, here is his. He has a museum in Philadelphia. Now, I've been to the museum. I'm glad that the photos that I'm showing you for this is in black and white. It's much more subdued in black and white, and it works really well black and white. I went to the museum, paid my $25 to go through the exhibit. I've seen most of his work in person. Living in Dallas, there's lots of places of Dallas that has his work, and I didn't think it was worth the money, but the space was definitely different. I would say go one time, but to me, after that, that's all I'd really want to go back. I don't think I'll ever go back again. I've seen it, done it. Okay, move on, kind of like thing. And so here's the entry, and you can see in the gallery where he has his actual art pieces. He also almost wallpapered the wall with silk screens, screened imagery, and it is nice, but it is a little bit chaotic, so to speak, a little manic. All right. Now, he also chose to do popular art pieces. Okay, this is something that starts coming into full swing in the 70s and late 60s, is copying art pieces and kind of classifying it as your own, but changing it just enough. We all know that Leonardo da Vinci did The Last Supper, and if you don't know, you will find out at the end of the semester. So we have Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. Now notice he did it in red in the museum, and I chose to put a little swatches, and I put a little overhead sheet for you guys to see. But could he have chose any other color? Would it have been just as fine? Sure. Okay, I would have liked to seen it purple. I think purple would have been good. But there's a meaning possibly for red, don't you think? So I usually ask the class, what do you think it's about? And I generally get what it's probably about. It's about him dying, so the blood of Christ. Okay, so using that red makes total sense. But I could have seen it also in a purple, maybe a blue. But then maybe some people might have considered that a little sacrilegious. So maybe the red is important to do. Okay, MTV. What does this have to do with Andy Warhol? Well, If you've seen this logo, which most of you have, I'm sure, if you've ever watched the MTV Awards or any time MTV comes out with a movie, they have this spaceman kind of logo. Well, the owners to MTV, when they were in their 20s, came up to Andy Warhol in the early 80s, and he's an older gentleman at this point, and basically asked him if he would be interested in doing a logo for MTV. And he was like, well, what's MTV? And they told him. He liked the premise. He liked the idea. And so he said, okay, what's in it for me? And they're like, well, we can't pay you. Well, he was like, nope, not going to do it. And then he goes, but they're like, wait, we have something better. And I said, if this works out, for 1 week, we'll play. We know that you like to play musical instruments and you have a band. We'd like you to make a video, and we'll play your video on the hour, every hour, for 1 week. And he was like, okay, make it a month, and you got a deal. So they thought about it, and they said deal. And so they left. He called him back a couple days later. They came to the studio, and he shows them a spaceman. And they look at him really kind of confusing, and like, well, why did you do a spaceman? We told you we're about music. And he goes, look, what you're doing is you're making music videos. You're breaking the stereotype of listening. You're actually seeing the artist performing the music on TV, and you're just like someone walking on the moon. And that's why the image you have for MTV is the way it is. So, just a little tidbit of information there. Now, at the top, we have some of his most valued customers, and then we have the factory, all the people that work in the image below. Okay, now let's talk about the people on the top. These are the Rockefellers. Okay, they own Rockefeller Center. All right, the two, actually, all three of them have passed away at this point, but at this point, these are his biggest clients, and they bought everything. And then when you go into galleries, generally you don't have seats for people. High-end galleries sometimes will have a seat for some older collectors, because standing up for 3 hours is not their idea of a fun thing to do on concrete. So especially if you want them to stay around. And so you'll see this in fancier galleries on opening nights for older people to sit. Generally, the young people stand and walk around and schmooze with each other. Now, down at the bottom, you can see that he's doing his paperwork and notes, and he has a crowd of people there. This is what was in Time magazine about the factory. Now, if you were a newcomer to this, they would not let you into the photo. The group was like, you couldn't get your fame until you've been there for a few months. And so, and a lot of the initiations and their photographs, if you look in the pictures online, there's a lot of nudity. That was also another kind of hazing tradition that they did, is that they would tell the new person, you have to be naked in the photo shoot. And when they would do that, that meant that they were going to get cropped out of the image. And I even cropped one of the persons that's in the office space that's nude, because I didn't want you guys to see it. I don't show nudity just to show nudity, but I will tell you about it. Okay? Alright, now here is his band, Velvet Underground by Andy Warhol. This is the CD cover. Now, when this came out, it was good. It wasn't the greatest music. I've heard it, and I remember being in school, and college kids would say, "Hey, we're gonna go to a party, and they're gonna play Velvet Underground, and we're gonna drink and hang out there." And I'd be like, no, I'll actually go to a bar where there's real good music. But I guess for freshmen and sophomores, it seemed like the thing to do. It's not my scene. I'm not a big kind of folky kind of music kind of guy. And I mean, it's kind of like a mixture. It's like a really bad Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd. If I had to give you an idea what the sounds like, check them out. You can easily click on Velvet Underground on a Google search and see if you like the music. You might not. Depends on your personality. He also did directing. So here is his movie that I shown for you guys. Now, he's done a couple movies. He did one movie called Sleeping, where a man sleeps throughout the whole video. Now, when you look at a movie where it's like Andy Warhol eats a hamburger, or a man sleeping, and sleep is the title of the video, why would these movies be popular? Well, first of all, Andy Warhol's doing it, but there was also something happening in the 1970s. I don't know if you've ever heard of these or ever been to one, but they're a lot of fun, especially when you're young. I'd highly recommend it. To go one time and see it, no matter what your views and opinions are. I think the thing that most people do when they go to this thing I'm about to say is they like to dress up, and if you kind of think about movies in today's time, they're so extravagantly expensive to make, and the only time I ever see people going into costumes is to see movies, or when it's like a Star Wars movie or something like that. But the movie that most people dress up to and have a blast in is a Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think they're doing a TV show now on Fox, which is interesting to see how that's going to be on TV. But they're doing a Rocky Horror Picture Show, and if you've ever been to one, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never been to one, most people come in their costumes, so to speak. It's very sexualized. Some of them are, and some are reverse clothes of their sexual gender. But it's more than just the clothes. You can go without being dressed up, but you will see a lot of dressed up people. And it's the experience. People dance in the theater. People throw popcorn, and they have a great time. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend. They mostly start at midnight in little tiny theater venues. So see if your town has one, and see if you'd like to go to one. They're different. So what does that have to do with his movies? Well, people would go to his movies, and like Andy Warhol eating a hamburger, though that's only like a 5-minute video. But there are, and if you're watching the video, you can skip through a little bit of it. You don't have to sit there and watch the whole 5 minutes, because literally he just eats a hamburger. And it is kind of funny. And there's lots of people that have recreated his video on YouTube. But the sleep video was just like the Rocky Horror Show. It's a 6-hour video, so people would show up, and the man would be completely, he is nude in it, completely nude and asleep, and Andy is recording him, and in the movie, when the man wakes up at the end, the whole place goes nuts. Now, you got to understand, this is in the 70s. People are enjoying themselves. Some of them are in their pajamas. People brought food and drinks and drugs, and they're in there just getting snockered, okay? And then by the time he wakes up at the end of the movie, it's like New Year's Eve. Everyone goes nuts. Now, what Andy Warhol would do is he would show up to the theater, and he would just watch everybody and see how they were doing all their festivities and stuff. And when people found out that Andy Warhol was there, it just went crazy. And so he didn't go to every showing of his movies, but he did go to a lot of them. And a lot of people would question if he was going to be there or not. And that's what's so interesting about this, is that he would kind of think, is someone going to be there, or is Andy Warhol going to be there, or is he going to not be there? And so it was always a mystery. And he'd always show up at the end. He didn't start with them. And he'd always stay for a little bit. He just wanted to give enough hype for the movie so people would keep seeing his work. So click on the movie if you want to below, watch it, or you can watch it at the end. Now here's some DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth if you're not from here, Andy Warhols. Okay, so you look at these. Okay, so we have here his execution series. We have his self-portrait in the Fort Worth Modern, which I have other pieces, as I've said. And then we have the Chanel bottle, his products. Chanel bottle is also one of his more popular pieces. Now, we'll start with the Chanel and work our way to the last. The Chanel bottle, what I find is really interesting, they have about 25 to 30 prints at the North Park Mall in Dallas. All over the mall have his prints. They're worth millions, just sitting there on the wall, okay? Most of them are high up in the ceiling, so it's hard to get to, but not all of them. Highly recommend you check them out. He has an animal series and a product series that they're really nice. If you live in the area, go to the mall. It's great during the holiday season. Like I said, they've spent $1 billion on their art collection, and that's amazing that they have it in that mall. Next one, his self-portrait. Okay, I love this picture because I love the cowboy in the picture. It's right across the street from the rodeo stockyards, and it's not uncommon to see cowboys walking through the museum because when they're got some time off, they want to go look at something. The building at the Fort Worth Modern is gorgeous, so it's definitely something interesting. So people are like, well, let's go see what's over there, and they go, and so it's not uncommon to see cowboys. But I would like to know what's going through that cowboy's mind as he's looking at Andy Warhol. Okay, and I guarantee Andy would like this image too as well. Now the last one, his execution series. Now, this is a personal piece. Again, it kind of goes with that Last Supper, all right, with Jesus. So here we have an electric chair. And so this is an execution room for a prisoner. Now, he's trying to be anti-execution, okay? Now, he lives in New York. We live in Texas. You might live someplace else if you're taking the class elsewhere. But in Texas, we're known for our executions, okay? But New York is just as bad, okay? Don't let people tell you otherwise. They kill people just as bad as Texas does. Now, the reason for this piece is he was shot by a crazed fan. She was on drugs. She came up to him, and something happened, and she pulled a gun out and shot him in the stomach, and then ran away. She was later found, and the thing about it is where he was shot was not in a very popular area of New York. He had to crawl for a while till he was found. Once he was found, they immediately got him to the hospital. He survived. Now, there's something interesting that happened at this moment when he was found. After everything was done, and they told him, they said, "Look, well, you were saved. We got the bullet out." But there's something else that we need to tell you. He had AIDS, okay? And that was really popular in the 80s to have AIDS. He never made art about it. He actually kind of tried to hide it as much as he could. But when it came to prosecuting this young lady, a lot of people wanted to basically throw the death penalty on her because he almost died, and he told the prosecution, he goes, "I will not press charges against her if you put the death penalty on." He goes, "I want that taken out." And so they did take it out. She did serve a long sentence in jail. He wanted her to get cleaned and fixed up because she was definitely on drugs and had mental issues. And then after all that was said and done, he wrote to her. And he basically was telling everybody, he was like, "Look, I have AIDS. I'm going to die soon. I want my last bit of time to be cherished, and this woman is spending her life in jail, and it's a waste of a life. And so he contacted her, and supposedly, when she got done with prison, he set money aside to help her get back on her feet. So he is a good guy in that kind of. He understood people even when they hurt him. So which is, would you do the same? I always kind of think that it's a little different. All right. Let's get to the last image of him. Okay, his pop car. Okay. He went to the Metropolitan Museum, which is the biggest museum in New York City. Went to the Metropolitan Museum and said to the gallery director, "I have something for you. It's a gift. And I want to make something that's special." And so he goes to a BMW dealership, walks in, and says, "I want your fastest, most expensive car you have." And they show him what the car is, and he looks at it and goes, "Perfect." And he paid for it right then and there, and he hopped in the car, drove it like 4 miles or 5 miles to the Metropolitan Museum, and then they opened up the front doors. He came in, and then they kind of tarped him off so no one could see what he was doing, and he started painting this car. And he painted the car and said, "Here's my art piece." And so a lot of people find this car to be kind of interesting. Now, there's a book out there called Artist Cars. It's an interesting book of different types of cars, and BMW got such good press from this that BMW gave his money back. And BMW now, every so often, chooses an artist to design a car, and it's kind of neat when you see a good car that's done. All right, and so I'm going to be showing cars that are painted or done by various artists. All right, now we're on to the next artist. Took a small little break there. This next artist is Jean-Michel Basquiat. Besides being an artist with probably one of the better names out there, this artist is not a very well-known artist, even though they did a movie based on this artist. I think it was in 1996. Really good movie. The only thing I don't like about the movie is that they portray him only making great art when he was on drugs. And the truth is, most of his greatest art pieces were when he was off drugs. He is basically the prodigal son of Andy Warhol. Andy had no children, and so he kind of felt like Jean-Michel Basquiat was his son. And the one thing about him that makes it really kind of interesting, he was a graffiti artist, and he basically, in the movie and in person too, did this. He went up to Andy Warhol just saw him walking into a fancy restaurant, pulled out of his backpack some small little art pieces of his, and he came up to him and asked him if he'd be interested in buying ignorant art. And that phrase, ignorant art, that is something that's kind of interesting. Most people, when they make art, they try to feel like they're intelligent, or that it's something that's groundbreaking. And here's this young man saying, "You want to buy my ignorant art?" And so again, he kind of liked the playfulness that Jean-Michel had. Now, the one thing, and that's what Andy Warhol loves to do, he loves that playfulness. And so they worked really well together. Now, in the story, he basically sets up an idea that anybody could be an artist with the right backing or the right people. And it is, in the art world, it is sometimes who you know versus what you know. And in the 80s, they really played a lot with that, especially the graffitiist. Nowadays, I believe the majority of most artists have some sense of a bachelor's at least, that are very well known. Not every one of them do, but majority of them do. Some sense of formal education. More and more people are getting their masters to be teachers, and so education isn't always everything for art, so to speak. If you wanted to be an artist right now, sure. If you had the drive, the will, and the ambition to get out there, take the risks and fall, and hopefully succeed in a long-term battle fighting for your art, go for it. It's just sometimes a little easier to have an education behind you. Doors open a little bit more easier. But take a moment, look at that video. This gets played on Netflix a lot, so if you wanted to watch it, it's a good Netflix movie. Now, so here's the trailer. So go down below and click on it. Now, I also did a little bit more of his interviews. Now, this is the real Jean-Michel, not the actor, talking. Now, I know one of the videos in this is really light spoken, kind of hard to hear, but it's got a good kind of overall feel, and you can kind of tell by the datedness of the producer who produced it, because there's some words and terminology. Use the word master, which I was kind of, ooh, that's, I wouldn't do that with a white and black person, but it was a little bit more acceptable, I guess, in the 80s to say something like that. But he uses words all the time, and you'll see in this video he uses the word eep, which is, he uses these words that are made up sometimes. He comes up with, like, hashtags, so to speak, in his art, and there's no such thing as hashtags. So it's kind of interesting. He's a little bit ahead of his time. If he was in today's time with the computer and technology, I think he would have been more famous, but he got famous super quick, and that was his downfall. He got addicted to heroin. He's part of Studio 54. You see him date with a picture where he dated Madonna in the video, and they even talk about it in the trailer. Yeah, he got super famous super quick, and it worked for him. But it was a shame that he ended his life on his addiction, and that's one big part about art. A lot of artists sometimes get caught up in the lifestyle. It's just like a rock and roll kind of a style. When you get to be at these higher upper levels, sometimes it gets to be rock and roll life. So it's show after show after show, crowds of people, meeting the wrong people sometimes, and in this case, he's kind of always had those wrong people in his life, and now he had money to purchase the stuff that he wanted, and it ended up killing him. I do believe it really hurt Andy as well at the end, but that's what happens. Now, in this video, it kind of goes into more depth on the relationship, and you can see right even in this video, on this photo shoot, that they're kind of playing with each other and kind of this goofy nature. Andy's trying to be serious, and now one of the things that made him super popular is Andy Warhol said, if you want to get famous, you got to do something radical. And the Metropolitan Museum just bought a $60,000 Felix the Cat print or painting, and then the next thing you know, Jean-Michel Basquiat came in with a little paint can and a brush and started painting immediately on the wall of the canvas, and painted over the image of Andy Warhol's already purchased piece. And of course he got arrested. Now when he got arrested, Andy Warhol and the gallery director are saying, what should we do? And his response is, you should let the boy finish. And the moment the gallery director heard that, he realized this was a setup. This was a total staged event. And they did let him finish, and it is probably one of the more valuable pieces of Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat because of this, just the whole idea and the story behind it. Now, the next one I put in for a video, and I just put videos in because it's just faster for his work, and you can see the work behind it. It's really kind of raw looking. It's very graffiti in the 1980s. But I like this video right here where he's interviewed, and you can hear how he talks. He reminds me of a lot of a freshman that's coming out of high school that has a big ego. I get these a lot in my art classes, and that's fine to have an ego. You just got to be able to back it up, and he does. He does back it up, and having Andy Warhol behind him really helps. I mean, that is a big step in the right direction. I think Andy basically, if you were to think about it as like School of Hard Knocks, Andy was basically his graduate level thesis year, and so basically those 4 years that they worked together, that's just like grad school, and so it was a very lucrative position for him. It's just a shame that he died at such a young age from heroin. So, Roy Lichtenstein. Okay, so a lot of people, when they see the name Roy Lichtenstein, they recognize his art but don't know who he is. And when you think of pop art, you kind of think more on him than Andy Warhol. Now, Andy Warhol and Roy were really close friends. They both hit their pinnacle of their career almost simultaneously. When one got into Time magazine shortly, Lichtenstein got into Time magazine. And so when Roy made it to Time magazine, Andy told him that at this moment, we'll never have to worry about selling an art piece. And Andy was right. And Roy and Andy were basically super strong. Now, Lichtenstein's graphicness is based loosely off of comic books in the 1960s and 70s with their kind of graphic natures, like this one here I have where it's blam and ba-boom. And so it reminds me of early Supermans and Batmans of those times in the 1960s. But his art movement kind of revolutionized the way the 1970s art looked for comic books as well. So if you're a comic book fan and you don't know Roy Lichtenstein, really look at his work and look at the comics that were going on at that time. And it's interesting. I listened to all these, podcasts and videos and documentaries on comic book, and they never bring up Roy Lichtenstein. They always talk about the artists that were the comics. But to be honest, I really do believe that those artists that are highly revered in today's time, they were studying Roy Lichtenstein. It's just that I do believe the mass public does not know enough art history. And what's the gentleman? He's done those movies. God, I can't think of his name. All of a sudden, Kevin James. Not Kevin James. He did Clerks and Bill and Silent Bob and films. And if you know who I'm talking about, God, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyway, needless to say, he's a big opponent for comic books, and he talks a lot about comic books, but I've never heard him once talk about Roy Lichtenstein. And I'm just curious if he knows Roy Lichtenstein. So anyway, on that note, now besides the comic book words and the text and the aggressiveness of the black line. Also notice the comparison between the one on the left and the one on the right. There are these little tiny dots, okay? These are called halftones. For you younger people that have never seen these before, halftones were commonly used in commercial printing. Now, these are paintings, so he's painting in these halftones. And what does a halftone do? A halftone gives a value of depth. As the dots get to be closer to a V-like shape, as it goes to the apex and at the V, it makes the dots stand out a little bit more, and they become a little bit darker in those areas. But it generally gives an overall tone that helps on that push and pull motion. You can see here in this one where the dots are on the lady's face, and there's light kind of peach colored dots, there are dark brown dots, and they're just kind of like a medium peach and brown dot. So there's 3 layers of dots that make the skin tone. He got really good at blending the dots and choosing what gets dots and what doesn't get dots, and it's kind of interesting on this. Now let's look at this image for a second. First of all, what's the emotion going on in this? Okay, when you look at this, I see two variables. Okay, one of the variables is he's angry at her, or is he questioning her? Okay, she's definitely looking scared, but also she's kind of looking at this point like she's trying to hide something. And they're driving obviously very fast with these horizon lines that are going across her face, these black and yellow lines, which gives that sense of motion, like when we talked about in design. But what's going on? Now, that's one of the things I like about his works. His works are kind of like comic books. They tell a story in one frame. Now, what's great about his comic kind of a style is he's kind of got this character it's a damsel in distress, or typically a damsel that's trying to pull something over on a loved one, and it's very risque in some aspects. So here the damsel in distress is being kind of threatened in this one. You'll see in a couple others here where it kind of has an interesting twist. Now, what I like about these is what his idea was behind this. Is you come to an art show, you see the characters in the paintings. They're totally made up. The guy kind of has like a Dick Tracy, James Bond 007 kind of look to her, and the women kind of have this, I would kind of guess, in the Albert Hitchcock kind of a feel of an actress, classical, just beautiful blondes, typically, sometimes brunettes. But here he's kind of pushing and pulling those kinds of characters that he sees in modern day film and comic books, and he's making his own characters. And so what would happen is, as you'd look at the museum or gallery, you'd see the work, and there would be a storyline establishing. All right, and as you look through the work, you start to recognize stories that connect to each other, and that's what he was trying to do. He's basically trying to get you hooked on his comic. So you would sit there and you'd look at the art piece, and then you'd walk across the room, and then there might be a connection between one piece to another. But then that might be it for the show, and then the next show you come to, and then you start to get it. You start to see the common piece, and then you go, oh look, well that one goes to here, and this one goes to there. So as you continually show up at his art shows, you get to understand the story. Great sales technique, okay? And buyers love that. They're like, I want to buy that series of that pieces because it's got a nice lineage going across, and they want that in their home. Now, I love the one on the right. I love what she says. I don't care. I'd rather sink than call Brad for help. Now, the piece that's before this, and I couldn't find it online. I could buy it, but I didn't want to buy it. But I could find the piece. I could tell you what the piece is about. It's the same lady, and she's on top of a rooftop with a gentleman. And you could see the back of the gentleman's neck and hairline and his ear, and her lips are going right against his ear, and she has a little message going out saying, if Brad ever catches us up here, he'll kill us. And then you get this next piece that she's drowning in the water. She'd rather die than call Brad for help. Okay, so you can definitely tell there's something going on there, and I kind of like this playfulness that this piece has. It is very surreal and very serious at the same time, though. Now here's one of his Time magazine covers. All right, this was the one that got him his most popular and fame. This is shortly right after Bobby Kennedy's assassination. Okay, when the Kennedys were assassinated, it was kind of faux pas to do the Kennedys in art. It was kind of like it was too early, so to speak. And Bobby Kennedy was not JFK, and so when this happened, it was very shocking, and he immediately made this piece fairly quickly. Time magazine saw it, put it on the cover, and here it is today. This is the piece that Andy Warhol said, the moment you get famous, this will be the moment that sets you into fame. And it's true, it totally did. And now he didn't just limit himself to these pop icons. He also kind of played with some cartoon characters. If you remember in Basquiat, where I talked about Andy Warhol was doing a Felix the Cat, some of the old vintage comics or cartoons, each artist kind of chose one, and he chose Popeye as his kind of character. He didn't do very much with them. He kind of did a few things. I think he was just kind of riding the coattails of Andy Warhol a little bit on that. But they kind of worked in sync a lot of times. When Andy would do something, so would Roy, and so they just kind of go back and forth on an idea. Now, here comes the piece next where I talked about in Andy Warhol's section that he was trying to help a friend. Now, the piece you see on the left is done by Roy Lichtenstein, and you look at it, it's classic Roy Lichtenstein. It's got that kind of cartoon feel. But most people, when you look at it, hopefully you see what I'm seeing at the beginning. A lot of people see General Mao as he's smiling, okay? And then you look over at Andy's, and does he look like he's smiling? No, because it's taken from an original photo. Now, this is where artists get in trouble quite often, okay? When an artist goes in and works on a piece, they sometimes they miss the easy things, okay? So this is supposed to be, that bottom lip is not supposed to be teeth, that white portion you see on Roy Lichtenstein's. And so this got sent out in the Time magazine, and immediately there was backlash. And so that's like doing a picture of Saddam Hussein right after 9/11 and having him smile in the picture. A lot of people would find that distasteful, and that's what a lot of people during this time found this piece to be distasteful. And as quickly as you rise, you can fall just as quickly. And so Andy Warhol came out immediately with his piece and said, look, he was trying to show the light on the bottom of the lip. And so Andy Warhol purposely kept the color out of the lips so you could see the similar reaction to it. And so basically he's trying to help Roy Lichtenstein here. Was he successful? Yeah, it helped. But it still got some backlash. And I do think that was one of the biggest downfalls, because it took him out of the spotlight really kind of quickly. But he was very successful, needless to say. Now, this is your first Picasso piece that you've seen in this section so far. This is a piece that's going to be on your midterm. This is a question, okay? And so I want you to write this down. Now, you see right here, this is a piece called Breaking Down the Bull, okay? Now, you're going to hear me talk about Picasso in many different lights. I focus on his positive and I also focus on his negative. And here's one of his negative moments. he is very upset with another artist, and because another artist is starting the world of abstraction and breaking things down to its stick figures, okay? And Picasso is upset with this because this gentleman who's breaking things down to its simplest form is breaking it down so far, and he's basically saying it's nothing. It's easy to do what this artist is doing. And now the artist is Mondrian. And so when we get into Mondrian, you're going to find that Mondrian is shocked that Picasso finds him as a threat. But he very much does find him as a threat. So here we have Picasso's breaking down of the bull. He chose a bull because he figured that's kind of like his power animal, his identity animal. And so he's breaking down this bull to the simplest form. And he's basically mocking Mondrian. Now, Mondrian, besides breaking the bull, or breaking down his images down to stick figures, which were typically trees, Roy Lichtenstein liked this battle, okay? So Roy Lichtenstein decided that he was going to do a series. So hopefully this helps you see the Mondrian side of it. So he's basically paying tribute to Picasso, okay, for setting up the bull image and breaking it down on one sheet of paper, okay? And so he's kind of doing he did a series of prints where it looks like a normal bull, then he breaks it down into yellow tones, into simplest forms. Then he kind of keeps going into more of a breakdown. So as he breaks this down even further and further, it gets down to simple squares and rectangles. Now, does the piece at the final bit look like a Mondrian? Well, let's see. The final one is this. It has a remnants of a Mondrian, but Mondrian would never do a print like that. So it's basically a Roy Lichtenstein's version of a Mondrian. And you might have seen Mondrian's work when you were in grade school of white squares with black lines with maybe a blue square, a red square, and a yellow square in it. That's Mondrian's work. And when we get into the next section, we'll be talking about Mondrian and in full depth. And in my opinion, Mondrian is probably one of the top 5 greatest artists to ever live. And he's an abstract artist, so most of you might not agree or understand his work, but when I get through it, maybe you will at the end. Now, like I said, Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein were friends, and whatever one would do something kind of groundbreaking, the other one would typically do it. And news reporters were constantly in their studios, and so after this piece was made where Roy Lichtenstein broke down the bull and paying tribute to those artists, a reporter went up to I got the names off, Andy Warhol, and said, "Are you going to break down your bull?" And referring to the Elsie the cow image. And of course, with Andy's sly remark, he goes in and says, no. He goes, first of all, she's a bull, not a cow, and it's been done to death. No, I'm not doing it. I think Roy kind of did it to its fulfillment. So, which is good, gives kind of Roy Lichtenstein his own kind of dues. Okay. Now, in the 80s, he also, and even into the 90s, he started doing these more abstractions of brushstrokes. And I really kind of like these. Some people love them, some people don't. If you like kind of a Japanese flair and style, this kind of has that Japanese flair to it. You can see the brushstrokes, and he's basically saying, this is my mark, in a very illustrative way. And to me, it's some of my favorites. Then here, okay, is his artist car. BMW commissioned him to do this car, and it's also at the Metropolitan Museum as well. Kind of a slick-looking car. Now, here's something I just kind of always bring out. If you're from the Dallas area, I didn't know there was any Roy Lichtenstein sculptures anywhere. I've never even seen a Roy Lichtenstein sculpture till this piece. And I was at a place over there by Baylor Hospital, and actually my little daughter is playing behind this house when I took this picture. And I found this kind of interesting. I walked around this space, and then I noticed on the plaque on the bottom it said Roy Lichtenstein, and which I thought was kind of shocking. I didn't even know he did a sculpture piece. place. And I didn't even know we had this in Dallas. And it was in kind of a no place. It was not even a popular area. So I know a lot of people might miss it. So if you work over in that Baylor, Deep Ellum area, you might stumble upon it. It's in like a little walking center, I think for rehab people, for older people. And so, again, this was some of those things. I didn't know it was there, and I just kind of stumbled upon them. So anyway, just keep your eyes open. You never know what's in your city.